John Evans came to the embankment and sat down on his favorite bench, leaning on his cane and resting his chin on his hands. He could have sat like this for hours on end, looking at the water that was glittering from the sun. He was thinking about his life, about how he and his wife Alice were aging alone, remembering his daughter Mary, who died 10 years ago. Oh, how beautiful she was, his girl, his beloved and only daughter. God blessed them with a daughter when they had already lost hope. But a miracle happened. It was as if the heavens had pity on them. John and Alice once took a little trip and stayed in a small town full of tourists overnight. "Why is your town so crowded?" John asked one of the locals. "This time of year, those who dream of having a child come to the town. We have St. Mary Temple here, and near it there is a miraculous rock and a spring flowing from it. One should drink some water from the spring, pray to St. Mary, and ask her for a miracle. If you do this, you can be sure it will happen." "Darling," Alice touched her husband's hand, "I would really love to see it." "Sweetheart," John smiled, "it's just a legend. We've been together for almost 15 years. Do you still have hope?" Alice nodded and looked at her husband in a way that made it impossible to say no. Oh, how amazed he was when a few months later, Alice told him she was pregnant. They were both full of joy. Later, they'd become parents to this pretty little girl. They named her Mary. Now they were truly happy. Both John and Alice adored their daughter. She made them happy by being a kind, soft, and outgoing little person. In the evenings, she would climb on her father's lap and talk to him about her day, show him the drawings she had made just for him, and sing and laugh, which made John's heart melt. "Thank you, darling, for this gift," John would tell his wife, pointing at their daughter. Alice would smile and snuggle up against his shoulder in response. Years passed. Mary grew up and became a beautiful young lady. She painted really well and decided to make a living by it. She particularly enjoyed going to the embankment and painting sunrises and sunsets reflected in silver water. Sometimes John would go with her and sit on a bench nearby. But he was not admiring the nature or the view. He had his eyes glued on his daughter, who he doted on. And then something happened that divided John's and Alice's life onto before and after. Mary died in a car crash, and her parents were left alone, becoming 10 years older in one day. No one knew how it had happened. Mary was driving home from an exhibition she was invited to. The officer later explained to them that Mary lost control of the car and slammed into a concrete wall. The car caught fire, leaving Mary with no chance to survive. She was identified off the medallion that John had given her when she was born. A poor old man never recalled the funerals, although even if he tried, he wouldn't be able to because everything was such a blur. John got teary again. He couldn't help frequently coming to the embankment that his daughter loved so much. Suddenly, he felt someone touching his hand. "Are you okay?" John looked down and saw a little girl about 5 years old. The old man shuddered. It was his daughter, Mary, her 5-year-old self. "Mary, my girl," an old man said. "No, my name's Nicole. I live there with my mom and dad." John sighed heavily. He thought of his daughter so much that he must have started losing his mind and seeing her everywhere. "You're such a beautiful girl, Nicole," John said, "and kind." "Yes," the girl smiled. "I know it. Dad says that I take it from Mom." "I can believe that," John nodded. He wanted to add something else, but words failed him when a young woman came near them and called Nicole. "Darling, we have to go home now." Nicole waved to her and then turned to John. I never had a granddad, but if I had one, I would want him to be like you. And then added, we are leaving soon, but tomorrow I will come back here. Will you too? I will, John nodded. I will be waiting for you, Nicole. John's eyes were still teary, so he wasn't able to take a proper look at the girl's mother, but something in her silhouette seemed familiar. His heart started beating faster, but the girl and her mother had already disappeared around the corner. At home, John didn't mention anything to Alice. He couldn't wait for the next day to come so that he could go to the embankment again. He suddenly had this urge to meet the girl's mother, and it was so strong that he couldn't help it. John came to the embankment long before he would usually do and shuddered, unable to move. Some woman stood on the exact spot that Mary loved to stand on when painting. The woman had her arms wrapped around herself and was staring off into the distance. Then she started slowly walking away without lifting her head. Mary! Mary! The old man cried. Now he was absolutely certain that it was his daughter. But how could this be true? He had buried her himself. He had taken the medallion off her neck, put it on his own, and pledged to never take it off as a reminder of his daughter. He had it on his neck right now. Meanwhile, the woman was leaving and was about to disappear around the corner. John quickened his pace and almost started running after her. Mary! Mary! My girl! Tears made John's vision blurry. Everything was starting to look foggy, but he had to make sure he had made a mistake. Otherwise, how could he go on living? Go on living, knowing that there's a woman living nearby who looks exactly like his daughter and not try to learn anything? No, that would be impossible. Mary, John's voice cracked. But the woman slowed down her step, stopped, and turned to John. Are you calling me? John reached out for her pleadingly. My girl, don't you recognize me? Sorry, no. And my name's not Mary. It's Linda. No, no! You are Mary! Mary! An old man put his hands over his face and suddenly started falling and losing his consciousness. The woman helped him walk to the nearest bench and unbuttoned his collar to make sure that he could breathe the fresh air. Then she immediately pulled her hand away as if it got burnt. The medallion, it's mine, Linda said, and suddenly she started shouting, unable to control herself. Now I can recall everything. Dad, Daddy, it's me. It's me, Mary, your daughter. My girl, John cried. But how? I don't understand. Oh, Dad, I'm going to explain everything. But first, tell me, where's Mom? At home. She's at home. She's okay. Now you, tell me everything. And Mary told him everything she could remember. That day, when she was coming home from the exhibition, she saw a woman trying to hitch a ride. Mary decided to give her a lift, unaware of what would happen next. How could she know that she was putting herself in danger? What could this young woman do to her? Mary had always been kind and compassionate, so she stopped the car. But as soon as she did, a man jumped out of the bushes and hit Mary on the head. Then the robbers dragged Mary into the back seat and drove away, taking everything valuable that was in the car, including her medallion. They threw Mary off the cliff. She didn't witness anything else. Due to the head trauma, she lost her memory. Mary didn't know that the woman put her medallion on her neck and sat in the driver's seat. While driving, she and her partner had a fight over Mary's money, and she kicked him out of the car. But what they had stolen didn't bring her any happiness. She lost control, slammed into a concrete wall, and burnt together with the car. John and Alice were so devastated by what had happened that they didn't insist on a forensic examination. They recognized the car and the medallion, and nothing else mattered to them. And for 10 long years, they'd been mourning their dead daughter. Meanwhile, Mary had spent a long time in the hospital. However, the doctors were not able to restore her memory. One of them fell in love with her and started calling her Linda. They got married soon, and now were raising their little daughter Nicole. They lived in a nearby town. Not so long ago, Mary saw an article about the plans for the reconstruction of the embankment in a newspaper, and she recalled the place. She asked her husband to take her there so that she could try and remember something, but she couldn't. They came here 2 days ago, and Mary was very upset that her idea didn't work out. She was certain that she once had been there, that something was connecting her with this place, but she couldn't remember. And then Nicole told her that she had met a kind but a very sad old man. Mary sighed bitterly. She was very sad that her daughter never knew her grandfathers and grandmothers, as her husband had lost his parents early in life. And Mary didn't remember anything about her previous life. And now, meeting her father made her recall a flood of memories. Mary held her father tight. "I'm found, Dad. I'm found, and we'll never be apart anymore." On that evening, for the first time in 10 years, John and Alice's house was full of joy and chatter. Nicole was hugging her grandpa and grandma, singing to them as her mother once did. Mary recalled every single detail right after entering the house. She kissed her mother, stroked her favorite things, and sat in her room, which her parents left just as it was when she lived there. Mary's husband was very happy that she got reunited with her family, and talked to John and Alice, who didn't hide tears in their eyes. The whole family gathered at the dinner table. They were the happiest people in the whole world.